Good evening, folks. I'm Freddy Vazquez, coming on for a quick episode. Climate change, is it real or a myth? Well, many residents here in the city of Yonkers are suffering from extreme heat and cannot escape. Yonkers does not have enough green space. Let's talk about it. I'm Freddy Vazquez, this is Basement Politics. Coming on really quick. Let's talk about climate change and green space. Do we not have enough green space here in the city of Yonkers? I just want to come on real quick because I was, someone sent me an article and I was reading it, and I want to share it here. It's something like, I've been talking about housing and, and the need for housing, but also, housing with consideration for our elderly, as these heat waves have been, well, recently we've had some nice weather, not too bad, but we've had these massive heat waves, and our elderly, have been feeling the effects, and it's been hard and difficult for them to breathe, especially elderly who live in low and affordable income housing developments. Many have AC units that are not working properly or at all, and they can't go outside to escape and go out into a shade area because there's no trees. It's not enough green spaces here in the city of Yonkers. So I wanted to just talk about that. I've been talking about housing, and we have to make sure that our elderly are being taken care of. Yonkers residents seek refuge from dangerous urban heat islands. They're calling them islands, these urban developments where they can't go anywhere. Yolanda Lee feels trapped in her one-bedroom apartment in Southwest Yonkers. On hot days, the AC unit mounted in her 60-year-old's living room window gives the only wearing respite of she has. She sits alone on her bed watching CNN, of course, or making calls to family. Outside, among the low-rise brick public housing buildings she's lived in for 6 years in Southwest Yonkers, it's empty in the courtyard and on crumbling sidewalks. There are no trees to break up asphalt and concrete around the buildings. The benches meant for residents who are typically Black, Latino, elderly, and disabled are exposed to the beating sun. And those benches get hot, right? And it's like also in the parks, and maybe, DPW, or I should say maybe the Parks Department should consider covering the slides and the play areas in the parks. I know they've been doing a lot of renovating and stuff of the city parks, but in the summertime, those slides get very hot and it's dangerous for the kids. Taking my kids out, I've noticed that on hot days, they can't go on the slide and a lot of that other stuff. So, we got to consider that. But here in the courtyard, I see in the picture here, the lady's sitting outside. There's nowhere for her to kind of get a break from the sun. And so, do we need more green space here in the city of Yonkers, right? The only cool, shady area visible from beyond Lee's AC unit is a fenced-off empty lot that has just 2 trees. Just 2 trees. It frequently floods there with water stagnating for days. And I wanted to just talk about it because I think it's important that we, think about this, and the city thinks about this, especially during heat waves. I know the mayor recently announced that they had opened up some cooling centers. It's dangerous for elderly and those who have, medical conditions, and people die in that type of condition. So it's important. But I found this interesting when reading this article. It's just not here in Yonkers, right? It's just not here in Yonkers. So I saw this other article from Virginia. We created scorching heat islands in East Coast cities. Now they're becoming unlivable. Right. So I'm like, is this really, climate change real? Or is it a myth and they're spreading all this propaganda? Or do, we have an issue with the housing developments along the East Coast? And they're becoming heat islands, as they say in this article on USA Today. On blazing summer days, she begins gasping for air inside her Petersburg, Virginia apartment and was forced to call 911. If she had been able to look out her window to see the ambulance pull up at the Carriage House, an income-based complex for the elderly, she wouldn't have been able to see a single tree, just the other side of the sprawling big brick building. Right? She lives on the edge of a type of heat island, which with wide stretches of concrete that bake the sun and retain the heat. So it's a similar article, talking about Heat Island, elderly, mostly Black and Latino, disabled, living in these low-income apartment complexes where the AC units aren't working. There's no escape from the heat. They have no trees. There may be like one or two trees somewhere where they can't even get to, right? So maybe that's something the city of Yonkers and other cities should be considering. But city of Yonkers, that's what we talk about here, should consider a lot of the developments that are going up. They need more trees. They need spaces to get shade. And elderly people, especially, they like to go out. They like, they're not the young guys, young people, all of the technology and on the internet all day long inside. They want to go out. They like to socialize. That's the old school way, going outside and socializing with people. So, I just wanted to make mention of that really quick. And because it obviously seems to be a problem, right? Not just in Yonkers, it's the article in Yonkers. There's an article about Virginia here and elderly people, those living in low income, affordable housing with medical conditions. And, they're developing these housing without any green space, any trees, or nothing like that, right? And we have to think about that here in Yonkers as they're doing all these massive developments, and pretty much they're taking up any space for any trees, right? Everything is just going to be brick buildings, and we're going to all be on a heat island here in the city of Yonkers and stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk about that really quick. Hopefully this will get out to the officials and those involved in developing housing, Macy, municipal housing, West Hab, right? And anyone else that's involved in developing housing for the elderly, or just low income, affordable housing, because it's, an issue. When you take away all the trees, there's no shade. And these buildings, all brick and concrete, retain that heat. And then, people are fixed incomes, living at poverty or below poverty. They don't have ACs maybe, or ACs that are working properly. ACs are expensive now. They keep going up. Everything's expensive now. But especially when the heat waves, prices go up in ACs, right? And so they can't afford it, and they can't escape to go outside and go in the shade and maybe catch a little breeze because there's no trees. They cut all the trees away. Just concrete jungle. And so the article in regards to the Yonkers woman in Lohud also goes on to talk about redlining, which I think is also important. Communities divided, conquered by redlining. In Southwest Yonkers, there is much less green space or trees that can cool it, and it also faces increased flooding that destroys buildings and isolates residents. And we have a massive flooding problem here in the city of Yonkers. Many areas, when we have these torrential downpours, get flooded. I get water often in my garage sometimes, but that's some stuff I got to take care of mostly low income Black and Latino residents are trapped on each island. So again, they're calling this an island. And so I don't know. I just find it weird. Like, you have this article from USA Today about, Petersburg, Virginia. You have this in the Lohud, this article, and they're talking about islands, right? They're low income, people who live on low income housing are being trapped on these islands, right? I don't know if that's all propaganda stuff. But anyway, mostly low-income Black and Latino residents are trapped on each island, whether caused by urban heat or a flood, trying to look for their own way to cool off or stay dry. It erodes social cohesion, said Bridget Griswold, who sat on a rock by one of Nodine Hill's few trees at School 23 a recent Friday afternoon when temperatures reached 90 degrees in Yonkers. And with that comes a compromised ability to build resilience in the face of climate change. Right? Blame it on climate change. How about don't cut the trees? Right? If they didn't cut the trees, there'd be more trees to absorb the carbon monoxide and give us fresh CO2, right? But you're cutting up all the trees. Talk about that. Griswold, the executive director of the environmental justice nonprofit Groundwork Hudson Valley. Their office actually, I think, is located, or one of them anyway, on Main Street right there by Paxo's Diner. And just before you get into the square, if you're interested, has overseen mapping of Yonkers heat islands, including Nodine Hill and areas vulnerable to flooding. Much of these maps correspond with redlining. So they're basically saying that they're putting all the Blacks, Latinos, elderly, people who are poor, have disabilities in areas that are becoming heat islands, and flooding zones. Is that what's happening here? All right. The outlawed racist practice used by the federal government in the mid 20th centuries to determine which areas got loans. That's what redlining is. Communities of colors and immigrant communities often saw the worst discriminatory practice by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, a New Deal era program that banks and other lenders used. In 1937, maps outlined many Southwest Yonkers neighborhoods in red ink to mean hazardous. So that's where I guess they get redlining from, such as No Dine Hill. And some might consider it still hazardous, right? Or in yellow for definitely declining, which included Lee's neighborhood. Residents living or moving in these areas struggled to obtain home loans that could build wealth and also give a stake in bettering their neighborhood. This could include projects such as a new park or updating sewage system, but it could also mean tree planting and gardens. So there you go. Climate change, redlining, are have some kind of relationship there, apparently, here in the city of Yonkers, Southwest Yonkers. It appears that many of the neighborhoods that Blacks and Hispanics and poor, elderly, disabled people live have problems with heat, are becoming heat islands, as they're calling them, areas that retain massive amounts of heat and make it dangerous for those living there who are vulnerable, like the elderly and those with medical conditions, and also are being pushed into areas that are flood zones, I guess. But that's not necessarily true, right? There's a lot of people who, own homes in other areas, have experienced a lot of flooding. A lot of people along Nepperhan, right, just before you get to Executive Boulevard there, used to flood a lot. So I don't know, but definitely, they don't care about the trees. As a result, many communities suffered neglect or received large projects. I guess, these areas wouldn't get loans. These areas that they considered, dangerous or anyway. Redlining maps help create urban heat islands that raise temperatures by as much as 10 or 15 degrees. Wow, that's a lot. So, wow, I didn't even notice that. So basically these, housing developments, the brick and the concrete retaining the heat causes the area to be hotter by 10 or 15 degrees. That's a lot. It's a big difference. The profusion of concrete and paved surfaces also limits water drainage during floods. In Southwest Yonkers, the city's century-old combined drainage and sewage systems makes it harder to empty still water during a storm. It also creates a public health concern with raw sewage overflowing. So yeah, I've seen that. Anyway, we're going to see tragedy outside the Will Public Library. Oh, hey, Keisha Skipper, I didn't know you got interviewed for this, huh? Outside the Will Library, Keisha Skipper sat for an interview on a bench surrounded by trees in a cool area covered in bark. Nice. This green space differed from the congested southwestern neighborhoods she advocated for as the first vice president of the Yonkers NAACP, whether it's with housing or eviction. We still fighting for that housing thing, the affordable housing thing? Still fighting for that? No? Keisha Skipper and the NAACP were among the individuals who were there at City Hall, upset. And I spoke about this in the podcast when Tasha Diaz killed the housing ordinance. Just thought I'd mention that. Whether it's housing, evictions, or with climate change for the city's newly formed task force. Climate change task force in the city of Yonkers. I hope they're more successful than other groups. Anyway, during heavy rains, she pointed to the streets often flooded to one's shin. Where's that happening? Well, I know by my mom's car accident, this has been happening for years. She went to Caldor, so that's how long ago it was. It was Caldor's. She parked in the parking lot there on Central Avenue, but she parked in the area where it kind of goes, it dips a little bit, and her car got flooded. She had a 1987 Horizon, Plymouth Horizon, and it was done after that. I remember that. It's like a tornado that came through. If people don't start speaking up and speaking out, we're going to see tragedy, she said. Yeah, exactly. So among needing more affordable housing availability, we need trees. We need more shade areas. So I guess the climate change emergency task force here in Yonkers, are you guys advocating for more trees and where they're going to plant them if they're all the space we have here in Yonkers is being built with buildings. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that climate change, and again, the poor people get screwed, the elderly get screwed. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Thing. Maybe People might find it interesting. I want to move on really quick, and then I'm gonna get up out of here. Yonkers police are cracking down on illegal 2- and 3-wheel vehicles. They say are a nuisance and safety hazard. And I almost killed somebody today on one of those. I don't know what he had. One of those little motorcycle 2-wheel things. Right. It's a 1-lane road. I'm going, and I'm just about to make a left, and he decides to go on the opposite lane to go past me. Thank God that for some reason, I decided to wait a little bit longer before I actually made the turn. I almost made it right away. I would have smacked the guy. He had no helmet on, and I doubt he had insurance, life insurance, or insurance for the vehicle. So these guys got to carry life insurance and vehicle insurance. All right. You guys riding with no helmets, all wild. You need both life insurance and vehicle insurance, because I would have killed that guy. He would have flew right over my car, and he would have slid, face first down Palisade Avenue. Totally illegal move that he did. And I'm glad that they're cracking down, because honestly, I'm not trying to be a potty pooper, but I kill somebody, I got to live with that guilt. Okay. And that's not okay. Right. Now, if I was, not a compassionate person, I would think about my car being damaged and the person not having any insurance. Right. So, but both are no good. Right. So that's why I speak about it. They need to do something about these, scooter people, because they're all over, man. They're doing crazy things. I've almost hit 2 people now. Really almost hit 2 people now. And I don't want to hurt anybody. And I don't want my car getting damaged. These guys obviously don't have insurance. They don't have helmets. They're unregistered. So they need to really do something about it.
Well, Yonkers is cracking down on illegal mopeds, scooters, and dirt bikes on the city's roads. News 12's Nadia Galindo spoke to the city's police commissioner about the dangers of these unregistered and uninsured vehicles and the action his department is taking.
2- and 3-wheel vehicles that once perused the streets of Yonkers are now sitting idle at transit towing.
These are all scooters, motorcycles, mopeds that have been impounded by the Yonkers Police Department.
Carol says they are likely headed to a scrapyard, as owners rarely claim them.
They can't prove their ownership because they don't have titles, they don't have the proper paperwork, so they can't prove that they own it.
In total, there are about 50 illegal 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles here, all of them towed over the last month, as Yonkers Police cracks down on the city's #1 complaints.
You may not think it's a big problem to be driving an illegal motorcycle. We're here to tell you you can't.
Yonkers Police Commissioner Chris Sapienza tells us the department's latest initiative, Half the Wheels, All the Laws, is about educating residents about the letter of law when it comes to riding dirt bikes, motorcycles, mopeds, and motorized scooters through the city.
When you're just driving around lawlessly, it's a problem.
New York state law says these vehicles must be insured, cannot be driven on sidewalks, and the driver must have a valid license.
And now that we've gotten that word out, now we're going to ramp up enforcement.
Since January, Yonkers Police has towed more than 200 illegal vehicles.
We wanted people to understand that they are illegal, that they are against the law.
So if you don't want to part with your bike, police say follow the law or risk losing it. In Yonkers,
This white one there is pretty expensive.
News 12.
So yeah, I'm glad that the Yonkers police are doing that, because again, I'm not, and I used to ride bikes. I used to ride bikes, dirt bikes. I mean, these scooter people are even worse than the dirt bike guys. The dirt bike, because they're just hopping on sidewalks. They're all over the place. They're doing it, it's okay. At least the dirt bike guys are kind of like, oh, we're not really supposed to be doing this. So, they kind of limit how they are. But the scooter guys are all over all day, every day. No plates, no helmets, chancletas on. You're going to mess your toes up, guys. Put some sneakers on, or, when you're riding those things, and just be careful. Just be careful, because again, today I almost really hurt somebody when I was about to make a left turn. I was not in the wrong. The individual decided to go on the oncoming lane to try and pass me as I was about to make a left. And I would have just crushed that guy, killed the guy. Would have smacked right into my car, flew. And so, I don't want to do that. It's not fair for those like me and other people are driving who may end up killing somebody, because they're doing something, dumb. And then we have to deal with that, right? We have to live with that. Like, damn, I just killed somebody, so, I'm glad they're cracking down on it. I totally agree. These guys are kind of a little reckless, and a lot of them don't have plates. A lot of them just don't have plates. They just don't care. So over here, like, Cancun and the DR over here with these things. Anyway, folks, I'm Freddy Vazquez. I just want to talk about that real quick, specifically just the heat, the housing, heat island, as they're calling them, the housing developments that are lacking any shade, any kind of trees, any green space. Keisha Skipper spoke to Low HUD there, and she talked about the need for that. Many people are suffering, the elderly, those with medical conditions, have a hard time, especially when there's heat waves, their ACs don't work, and there's no escape from the heat that these heat islands or these developments generate, especially because there can be 10 to 15 degrees hotter than areas outside of the developments because of the concrete and pavement. And that becomes very dangerous, just as dangerous as riding these damn scooters with no helmet on the wrong side of the road when you got a guy like me driving. I'm Freddy Vazquez. Thank you for joining me for this short, quick episode. I'm up out of here. I will see you tomorrow. It's Friday, TGIF. Oh, and by the way, guess we got to see a vote. Finally, I got the paper. Finally. But problems never stop coming, so I just have to deal with another issue. Not with the building department, with someone else. It's always problems at the problems. I say I'm a fireman because I put fires out all day long. That's like my job, really. So anyway, I'm Freddy Vazquez. Have a good night, folks. I will see you mañana. Take care. Will, get home safe, man. Get home safe, brother. Hope you've been enjoying your vacation. Take care. I am Freddy Vazquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Thank you for joining me tonight. Join tomorrow for the Friday mix. Oh, and by the way, Breen, I would like you to join me on Basement Politics. I will be speaking to you. I may attend the event if I'm able to be there, but I would love to have you on the show to discuss your platform for New York State Assembly for the District 90 there, and how you intend on beating the incumbent Nader Sage, why people should vote for you. You have my support, man. I'm kind of already leaning towards you, and I'm a Democrat. I'm a conservative Democrat. That's why. And you got to get all the conservative Democrats if you got to win. If you want to win, I should say. Right, Breen? I'd love for you to join me. Maybe your people can reach out to me. politicwithfred@gmail.com or politicswithfred@gmail.com. Let's set it up. Mr. Breen, Councilman Breen. Come on, I've been nice to you lately. I look forward to it. I'm Freddy Vazquez. Have a great night, folks.
Freddy wins.
No!